Shalom, all praises to Yahweh, Ba'Shem Yahushua, Ba'Shem Harakakadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders, great millstone, rule wall, and Shalom to the brothers doing the wax, sharing truth. I've got this article in Yahoo, from the LA Times. It's talking about, the nukes again, which is like, it's become that, that kind of prominent, prominent thing that's being meditated on by these nations. Because why? Because it's becoming clear that it's on the brink, man. And before, going back to like when Trump was still in office, or like a little bit just before, it was only really North Korea that was getting hyped up. It was only really maybe China a little bit, but not much. But it was really North Korea they were talking about, and now it's what with the Ukraine situation, Russia's getting mentioned, with Taiwan, China's getting mentioned, and it's now looking like, oh shit, okay. So this you can have some major players, some big dogs coming in, with their nuclear arsenals, and something can pop off. So it says even a limited nuclear war could kill a third of the world's population, study shows. It's funny because what, a tenth part of the city fell. Well, it's a portion of those on the earth are gonna die. But hey, that's something that's really been known, but now it's really being clarified. How peak it is. So that says it's escalating tensions among the UN. No, it's a lot. As escalating tensions among the US, Russia, and China revive old fears of nuclear war. Some researchers are warning that even a limited-scale exchange between such nations as India and Pakistan could have catastrophic consequences for global food supplies and trigger mass death worldwide. Yes, the other thing as well is, with these conflicts going down, just like that, really, it's been shown with Ukraine and Russia, because that basically clarified it with the cooking oils and the wheat and gas supplies as well in Europe. Well, global for the first three, but then like the gas supplies in Europe. These things have been disrupted so heavily. There's just now it's just kind of fucked. It's just kind of peak, because that's the funny as hell thing. Is as far as with most of the wars that have been like in the Middle East, most people have just kind of looked at them like, oh, it's just a thing that goes down. There's not going to be any significance to it. No impact upon their life in the long term. Like they're just gonna be able to be like, oh well, it is what it is, kind of thing. But now they know, like, especially when it comes to Europe, to China, to whatever, global trade, a global market exists. So it's a lot of things are going to impact people. People are going to be fucked. Says some researchers are warning. Okay, yeah, no. So nuclear conflict involving less than 3% of the world's stockpiles could kill a third of the world's population within 2 years, according to a new international study. And don't need to worry, it ain't going to take 2 years, because as far as America getting wiped out is going to be what it says in 1 hour, and you're going to have trades taking place. So you're going to have a mass amount of people being wiped out when these prophecies are fulfilled, and that's the reality of it. Because there's what according to a new international study led by scientists at Rutgers University, a larger nuclear conflict between Russia and the US could kill 3/4 of the world's population in the same time frame, according to the research published Monday in Nature Food. It's really a cautionary tale that any use of nuclear weapons could be catastrophic No, it could be a catastrophe for the world, said climate scientist and study author Alan Robock, a distinguished professor in Rutgers Department of Environmental Sciences. The finding comes at a time when, 30 years after the end of the Cold War, the threat of a nuclear holocaust may be greater now than ever. And it's funny because they've had what the fuck they call it, Doomsday Clock. It's actually called the Doomsday Clock. I believe it's called the Doomsday Clock, which is like, just a bunch of scientists meant to come together to say the likelihood of humanity dying off. And then I was saying, like, I think it was like 100 seconds to midnight. Last I checked, with obviously midnight being when humanity's meant to get wiped out. But then what? It's with the Doomsday Clock, I think they said it was the nuclear thing was one thing, but they also said AI and a few other things that now technologies that now are being developed further. You had that that chess robot, break the kid's finger when he tried to make a move. So they're kind of pushing out the vibration that, hey, AI could start being on a madness. Recently, UK National Security Advisor Stephen Lovegrove argued that the breakdown in dialogue between nations, as well as the loss of safeguards that have been created between nuclear superpowers decades ago, has plunged the world into a dangerous new age. Yeah, like the START treaties and whatnot. And even with the big one is with Iran. Because more or less, Iran is kind of the crux of the American interests by way of the state of Israel, because as far as they're applying pressure there because of the state of Israel. So that says a dangerous new age. UN Security Secretary General Antonio Guterres has also warned that the prospect of a nuclear conflict, once unthinkable, is now back within the realm of possibility. And I remember watching the episode of the hell's it called? That TV show of Mad Men, where they were what was it? The Cuban Missile Crisis. When you had the Russians sailing up, sending the missiles to Cuba, and then everyone was like glued to the TV. They were like, "Oh shit, you never know, shit can just pop off." Like, the nukes can start flying and everything's gonna be over. And that's also within that spirit of Esau, where it's like, for him, he's thinking like that death, is an end. So it's like, if he's gonna die, if he's not gonna be able to enjoy, all the carnal pleasures of the world out in here, then he'll just take everyone else with him. That's that movie Tenet by was it Christopher Nolan? That's that same spirit, the bad guy, the villain in that. It was basically like, what, I think he was dying. He had some kind of what's the word? A thingy disease. What the hell's the word? Fatal disease. Where he was gonna drop dead. So he was like, okay, I'm just gonna have the world end when I drop dead. And that's that's Esau's spirit. Because why? For them, in the grave there's no remedy. And that's why everyone's got in the mindset. It's like, if America falls, it's the world ends. If the nukes, like all these things, like the planet's gonna blow up. But in reality, what is it? It's just a matter of with Esau, he wants his age to continue, but that's gonna come to an end. So it says. Although Roebuck and others had previously projected that nuclear war would result in tremendous disruption to the climate and food supplies, the recent study marks the first time researchers have calculated the potential extent of the famine that would result and how many would die. The detonation of even just a small fraction of the world's nuclear weapons would spark massive firestorms that would rapidly inject sun-blocking soot into the atmosphere, blocking off a sudden touching of a sudden cooling of the climate. The researchers theorize. Researchers use climate models to calculate how much smoke would reach the stratosphere when no precipitation occurs to wash it away, and how this would change temperature. So they're going into, well, they're trying to go into the depths of it, but really it's even this is better. So as a result, they projected that tens of millions of immediate fatalities in the war zone will be followed by hundreds of millions of starvation deaths around the globe. Well, yeah, it's basically going to be something on a scale, unprecedented scale, because that's really what the level of destruction that Yahweh Hashem Yahshua is looking to bring, like at an unprecedented scale, a never before seen class of destruction being brought against this place, and all these systems as they currently run, all the different methods of rulership. Esau set up all these, his music industries, his Hollywood, all these things basically come to an end. The monetary system, all that, and that's the reality is something that's going to be used to wipe everything out, man. And that's why it's going to be on a whole different scale. It's going into like India and Pakistan, but hey, you're gonna have a wide variety of different nations getting in, man, getting a leg in, doing work. Isaiah 9:5, it says, "For every battle of the warrior is with confused noise and garments rolled in blood, but it shall be with burning and fuel of fire." So yeah, it's normally what? That, down in the trenches, the modern conceptions when you have guys with their guns, they'll be maneuvering through, might be maneuvering through cities, might be maneuvering through out in the hills, out in the desert and whatnot, because a lot of shit's been in the Middle East. They have artillery, they have airstrikes, they have drones, they have a variety of technologies where they're blowing each other up. But when you deal with nuclear armaments, you're just dealing with pure fire. That's where you get that Terminator 2 Sarah Connor getting blazed up, getting decimated, getting ended, getting evaporated, because that's a completely different conception of capability. There's you ain't sitting there and sniping a guy from X amount of miles away or whatever. It's just you're just roasted. And that's why it's gonna be so strange. This is what 2 Peter 3:10. But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, and that's the other thing. These guys are anticipating, but they're not really thinking, and that's why even with the studies they're doing just like smaller scale. If only 1 or 2 went off, they're not seeing a huge global strike going out where everyone's just letting loose. All the missiles are flying, all of them are up in the stratosphere, crisscrossing, arcing out, and then dropping and landing and impacting and just doing absolutely legendary damage. Never before seen levels of damage, which will completely, push end one age and bring in another. That's not really what they're looking at. They're just kind of looking at like, oh, it would just be, you might have like these guys, but then if they do it, they're not. But the spirit's gonna be put on them. Just like the spirit now is with these different EU nations to basically be at peace with with America, but that's only for a season. Once that spirit's changed, it's just like with Russia. There was that period of time. I remember watching the videos of when Obizu was in office and when what the hell was his name? Medvedev was not prime minister. I can't remember, it's president, whatever the thing Putin is. But it's Putin was prime minister and Medvedev was the president or whatever it is in the Russian system. He was at the head, and it's like you had him going out eating burgers, playing soccer or American foosball with Obizi. Like everything's meant to be at peace. But then what? It's that spirit got completely flipped when Putin came back in. And then what? You had Crimea getting annexed. You had Ukraine getting done in. He's gone back into that old school spirit. Completely flipped it. So that's, people was like, oh yeah, they wouldn't, it was everything, but y'all don't know. Everything's bound by prophecy, mate. So it says, but the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. The earth also, and the works that are therein, shall be burned up. Yeah, everything's going to get burned up. Everything's maneuvering with fire. Just as you had, in the time, I think it's a previous chapter, the days of Noah. It might be in. Well, yeah, 2 Peter 2:5, it says, and spare not the old world, but save Noah the eighth person, a preacher of righteousness, bringing in the flood upon the world of the ungodly. But was that the one? I think I might be thinking of. Let me just see, because that might be the one I had in mind. That might have been the one still. Let's see. Is it so it was. Oh, it was just up in the. Oh yeah, just further up in the verse. Okay. So yeah, 2 Peter 3:5 says, for this they willingly are ignorant of, that by the word of the Most High the heavens were of old, and the earth standing out of the water, and in the water, whereby the world that then was, being overflowed with water, perished. But the heavens and earth which are now by the same word are kept in store, reserved unto fire. So yeah, the prior, what's it called? Heavens and earth that were reserved to be punished, judged by fire. By water. And then the present one is, it's the same word's gone out, but this time it's going to go by fire. But yeah, Revelation 17:16, it says, and the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, they shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. Yeah, so all the nations that, EU and NATO, the allies, those that have been with the America, the American system, they've been gaining off the system, they're all gonna what? They're gonna flip. They're gonna flip, and they're gonna utilize, the fire, the nuclear weaponries, to eat her flesh and burn her with fire. That's how peak is gonna get, because it says what? For the Most High have put in their hearts to fulfill His will and to agree, and give their kingdom unto the beast, unto the words of the Most High shall be fulfilled. Yeah. So for that period, they've been put in the mindset to what? To be at peace, to be allied, to work with them, to give their power onto it. But then what? There's going to come the time they're going to flip. And that's also through the word, through the spirit. So yeah, I'll leave you there. Shalom, Yabashim Yashav, Yabashim Yashav, Hashem Bakal Kadash Bakata, Shalom.